Designers can achieve big reductions in the embodied carbon in buildings. Amy Hattan, Thornton Tomasetti's Corporate Responsibility Officer, is talking with in-house experts about how they're reducing the effect of buildings on climate change. Here's how Embodied Carbon is a production of Thornton Tomasetti.
Hi, and welcome to episode 16 of Here's How Embodied Carbon and our season finale. I'm Amy Hattan. Thornton Tomasetti is a multidisciplinary engineering and consulting firm where we've been focused on embodied carbon for over a decade, and we're channeling all of our capabilities to tackle climate change. In this season's episodes, I've been talking with colleagues about how engineers and designers can fight climate change by reducing the embodied carbon in the projects they design. In this capstone episode, we'll take a bigger picture look at this topic. My guest today is Scott Schneider, a senior principal and co-leader of our structural engineering practice. Scott is leading the effort to train all of our structural engineers in embodied carbon assessment. He also spearheads Thornton Tomasetti's involvement in the Structural Engineers 2050 commitment and keeps the firm accountable to our embodied carbon action plan. We'll talk with Scott about what motivates him in his quest to drive our organization and our industry to lower embodied carbon in the built environment. Welcome, Scott.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My colleagues have set such a high bar in the first 15 episodes of this podcast that I hope I can live up to that standard in this one.
Well, I'm sure you're going to. You've built up a distinguished career based on the core principles and strategies of engineering. Where historically has sustainability fit into your profession? Is it something that's always been important in your work?
So certainly sustainability and resilience are concepts that have been present in my work throughout everything that I've done across my career. I've tended to work on institutional projects, and the idea that we need to design our built environment and those projects specifically to be able to respond to evolving natural and man-made threats, as well as the concept of being thoughtful about material choices and system, has been pretty fundamental to what I've done throughout my career. Certainly, sustainability as a topic became a clear focus of my career in the 2008-2009 timeframe. This roughly coincided, I think, with LEED version 3, and when I became a LEED accredited professional. It was certainly the stage of my career where I also started to help manage some of the more significant projects for our firm. I worked with lots of thoughtful clients and architects who began to put sustainability goals more clearly on the table in terms of what they were after. And so now, along with the paramount goal of safety from an engineering perspective, sustainability joined the conversation with things like serviceability, constructability, and cost as key drivers of project decisions.
That's a good connection you're making between the core principles of engineering and sustainability. They really do match up pretty well. There are many aspects to sustainability, but today we're talking about solutions to climate change. Why do you think designers should prioritize climate action?
Well, certainly it's one of the world's biggest challenges, if not the world's biggest challenge at the moment. Our firm's been thinking about sustainability for nearly 2 decades, including the inception of what is now our sustainability and resilience practice in 2012. We've participated in industry groups, in committees. We've worked on things like certification, building analytics, life cycle analysis, and certainly more recently around embodied carbon. And as our firm's capabilities have grown, certainly in the areas of decarbonization and resilience, we've coalesced around a more holistic climate action strategy. We operate our business consistent with our purpose and core values, and with our purpose being we embrace challenges to make lasting contributions. This challenge seemed like something we ought to turn our attention to and really focus on. So in addition to being the right thing to do, we also felt a responsibility to act and to try and help. So as with all complex problems, we felt that an attempt at a solution needs to be multifaceted. So our climate action strategy is organized in a way to help our clients think through solutions ranging all the way from decarbonization to resilience.
Sounds very comprehensive. So I'm wondering how much of your time is now invested in understanding and reducing carbon? And are there any personal motivations for you?
Sure. I co-lead our structural engineering practice with my partner, Scott Lomax. He and I joined the practice leadership in 2020, which was certainly an interesting moment in the world. This also coincided with the culmination of the SE 2050 challenge and with the release of the SE 2050 commitment, which Thornton Tomasetti was a part of help getting built. Because the building sector contributes to up to 40% of all greenhouse gas emissions, we felt a responsibility to help to provide a solution to this problem. At that moment in time, our industry had become quite adept at making significant reductions around operational carbon in the projects that we designed. And it became clear to us that we needed to attack embodied carbon as vigorously. So when our co-CEO, Peter DiMaggio, sat down with us and asked us to take a look at what it would mean to our practice and to our firm to take on something like the SE 2050 commitment, we spent a lot of time thinking through the why, and I certainly spent a few evenings looking at my kids while we talked about it and felt the need to act. The idea that we needed to create a better world for our children became paramount, and it was clear to me that we needed to focus our efforts in this area. So certainly since then, I've spent a significant amount of my time trying to help lead our practice and our firm to be more impactful in this area.
Scott, listening to you speak, it is clear that you really care about this topic and want to help make change happen. We've spent 15 episodes on this podcast talking to subject matter experts about specific strategies for reducing embodied carbon. What do you see as having the most impact?
So I think the most impactful thing that we can do as a firm is get involved early in our projects, as early as possible. I think the more we're able to work with our clients to see their whole picture in terms of how our climate action strategy can help them deliver the kinds of projects that they want to execute, the better. To some degree, if we're diving into embodied carbon reduction straight away, we might be missing the bigger picture for our clients. Maybe there's a more impactful way to help them change their energy consumption relative to the part of the energy flow that impacts their campus or their building. That being said, when it comes to embodied carbon reduction specifically, I think the most impactful strategy is actually to step on a few of these pedals with the right pressure all at the same time. So as I mentioned, my colleagues have done a magnificent job in the first 15 episodes laying out the different kinds of strategies we can use to mitigate and reduce embodied carbon. And I think putting a few of them together, for instance, engaging the structural engineer early, selecting systems strategically, performing a whole building life cycle analysis, designing and specifying for lower embodied carbon materials, and then most importantly, following through in terms of how we specify our materials and how they get procured can lead to the most efficient building or project. So I think we'd really have to listen to all 15 episodes again to kind of pick and choose and dial in the right strategy for any particular project.
Yeah, sometimes the right strategy is all of the above, or sometimes it's not, depending on the situation, right? So thank you. It's clear that no one firm can solve the problem of embodied carbon alone. It's a pretty big problem. What industry collaborations are making headway on embodied carbon, and how are you involved?
So when we wrote our embodied carbon action plan, we made sure to include that we wrote down some goals around participating and collaborating in industry groups and other things across the whole landscape, because we know that we can't do this alone. We can't do it alone as the structural engineer on a project, and obviously we need more than one project to make a difference. We're seeing tremendous activity and energy in this area all across our industry, whether it's the number of conferences or events that we attend on this topic, our participation with groups like the Carbon Leadership Forum, private businesses studying embodied carbon mitigation across their entire portfolio. We've certainly participated with higher education institutions interested in having conversations around climate action and how that impacts the work they do on their campuses. But I think maybe the most impactful client is someone like the United States government, putting their low embodied carbon program into action through the Inflation Reduction Act. I believe the federal government appropriated something like $2 billion for the procurement of low embodied carbon construction materials. And a significant portion of this money was for funding for projects such as land port of entries. And we at Thornton Tomasetti are starting to work on several of those projects. So it starts to become clear that setting a policy by the government, the funding of some of those initiatives, and how those projects get started are starting to make an impact on lowering embodied carbon in the built environment.
Well, it seems like there's a lot of excitement in the industry about embodied carbon and groups making good headway. What signs do you see that we're cutting significant embodied carbon in buildings? And what gives you hope? And what more do you think is needed?
I think it's things like we've just discussed that give me hope. We're certainly seeing this take hold across our entire firm. So our embodied carbon community of practice is well over 200 professionals around the world. And there's a tremendous amount of energy and discussion that takes place in that forum. We're seeing this with increased vigor with our clients and across all our projects. And it's become a common early stage topic, right alongside costs and constructability. So I think that we've just got to keep pushing. I think that we have to keep pushing embodied carbon reduction and allow it to be something that it gets accomplished almost as a matter of course in the projects that we design. And we have to keep driving the mindset across more of the portfolio of our projects. We also know that we can help in a number of ways, whether it's through responding to natural disasters and helping to rebuild, whether it's renewing and adapting existing buildings, or whether it's helping our clients think through new strategies and maturing technologies like carbon capture and storage. I believe our industry's been able to accomplish some pretty amazing things over time, and I'm confident that we can do our part to help the world slow the climate change problem.
Well, I'm pretty excited. It sounds like there's so much we can do. Thank you so much, Scott, for sharing your experience and informed perspective and your passion and leadership on embodied carbon.
Thanks, Amy. I really enjoyed the conversation, and it was a pleasure to be here.
And thank you to everyone listening. This is the final episode of our series on embodied carbon. If you haven't listened to the previous 15 episodes, you can find them on thorntontomasetti.com or wherever you get your podcasts. And please follow the podcast to be notified when the next season of Here's How is released.